Chris with Phoenix Gaming. Today we're going to talk about Firefight by Mantic Games. We're going to do a bigger dive into our second episode of the Enforcers. We're going to take a look at all the troops. Before I dig in, apologize if I look a little rough. I've got the shingles and it's been an experience. Fortunately, what I've experienced has been much more mild than what I've had people describe to me, but that's like all this stuff under my neck. That's what's going on. That's actually why I haven't done any other videos yet, as I've just been in and out of the doctor taking care of this. For those that don't know, shingles is just chicken pox, but in an adult. When you get chicken pox as a child, and yes, I'm old enough that I didn't get the chicken pox vaccine. I actually got chicken pox. And so when you get it, it actually stays dormant in your body, and then it can come back later in life. And it's just adult chicken pox. It's not fun, it's not comfortable, but like I said, fortunately it's been a pretty mild case of it for me. So that's why the radio silence for the last week or two, and I apologize. This has been going on for about 10 days now, and I'm actually getting ready to head back to the doctor again so I can get prescriptions and stuff like that. So just to get that out of the way, that's what's going on. Here's what I want to talk about today. I'm going to talk about the troops. We're going to talk about, we're going to look at all the troop options for enforcers, and we're going to discuss what each one might be able to do, what kind of role it could have on the battlefield, and we may touch on what orders or command orders might be good with each unit. I don't want to get too deep into it because most of the units can benefit from most of the orders in some capacity, but if there's one or two standouts, I may bring that up. Before I dig in, there's some things that I want to say up front. Playstyle is going to dictate opinion on how units work. So you might play a unit and think it's the best thing since sliced bread, and you have great success with that. I will never tell you not to play something, right? Like if you come to me and you're like, Chris, why do you play this? This is trash. Well, it works for me because I figured out how to make it work and it fits the way I play the game. So when I say this, I'm going to kind of rank them. Know that this is coming from the perspective of somebody who prefers a more melee-centric style of game. Somebody who, even though enforcers seem to want to do more shooting, has leaned more heavily into their close the ground, get into melee, and that type of stuff. So my perspective on it is going to be different than yours. If you disagree with me, I'm not saying don't tell me. By all means, tell me, because I try to be open-minded enough to at least learn about what everybody else is doing and see how I can incorporate that into what I'm doing. Like, that is my goal. My goal isn't to sit here and tell you, this is good, play this. My goal is to tell you, here's how I see this. If you see it differently, please tell me, and then we can collaborate and we can talk and we can figure out things that work better for both of us. And it just makes everybody a better player. And so when you go through this, if you see something you don't agree with, please, by all means, tell me in the comments. But do it in a way that's like, hey man, here's what I like, blah, 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 blah. If you're rude, you're disrespectful, I'm just going to shut it down. I'm not in the YouTube content creation business to start arguments, but I would like to start discussions, if that makes sense. It's rarely been an issue, but I just wanted to touch on that immediately and get that out of the way. And just let you know, this is all coming from the perspective of a 40k player who has played a lot of orcs and a lot of Drukhari, so a lot of go fast melee. So that's kind of my mindset and my way of playing the game. So it may be different based on your perspectives. So the first one we're going to look at is the engineer team. They are 60 points, and I will say, first of all, for an enforcer unit, they're really cheap. If you put the rifle on the sergeant, they come at 65 points for 3, which is 16? It's not 16 points or 15 points a model. I don't know why I said that. It's like 22 and a half points a model, somewhere in there. Evidently, my brain wasn't working. Again, have been sick. So forgive the bad math. It would have been 45 points if they were 15 points a model. The drone does add 2 more shots, but they aren't trademark to the squad. The drones are really different. I'm kind of mixed on them. But they're a great, cheap unit for screening and camping. Yes, it's only 3 models, but I'm not looking at the cost per model. I'm looking at the cost per activation. And you're still getting 6 hit points. I believe their armor it's either 5 or 6. I know the Pathfinders are 5. I don't remember if the Engineers are 6. They're probably 6. But you're still getting 6 hit points on the table for about 60 to 65 points, and there's nothing wrong with them. They benefit from any order. The 3 main models in the squad, they have trademark weapons, which means they can get high velocity ammo, they can get precision fire, they can get the Council specs. They're all very usable. I don't know that you really want to spend command points on them, but if you needed to, if you were in a jam, you'd have that option. I would personally look at them as more of a throwaway or trash unit or a scoring unit. There are some missions where you need the hacker keyword, which I believe they have. I'd have to double check that in order to score bonus points. But also, you can get 2 of these squads for the price of 1 regular Enforcer squad. Now, they are auxiliary, which means they don't unlock other slots. So you're going to kind of run into that as an issue. But again, as a early activation, dart them onto an objective maybe and force your opponent to have to react to them. If you lose them, oh well. You're out. A 60-point squad that doesn't really offer you a ton if you keep them bare naked. If you soup them up, now we're talking about a bigger points investment. I just don't necessarily see the reason to do that. I would probably, from my perspective, look at them more as, here's a cheap unit I can put on the table, and if it dies, it dies. A lot like I treated my drones when I went to the last tournament at the Michigan GT. I looked at them as, I'm going to move them up the table. If they die, oh well. They're a fairly cheap squad. They don't really do much. I wasn't even playing them right anyway. I didn't use half the rules on their thing because they were just like a last minute throw them in because I needed some points. So that's kind of how I would look at Engineers. Peacekeepers are 90 points. And honestly, I didn't even realize these were troops. The Peacekeepers I ran at the tournament were part of the command retinue. So I took the Peacekeeper Commander, who gives you a green die. And then I just brought a couple of base Peacekeepers with him rather than a troop selection Peacekeeper. They're 90 points for 2 models, which means they're spicy. Like, that's a lot of points. They are not cheap, but they bring a lot to the table. They're armor 7, they're resilient 1, so it's going to be a little bit harder to spam them off the table with some troop fire. Weight of dice will still kill them. Like, if you get 10 marauders, 10 commandos into them, not commandos, brawlers, whatever the melee ones are. 10 of the melee marauders into them, you'll probably kill them. But they do have counter charge and controlled fire, so you have different options for your charge reactions. So again, if somebody's charging you and you went into Overwatch or you haven't activated, you can either counter charge or you can shoot them. And depending on how many models you have in the unit, I'd probably just shoot them because it's more dice. You get 2 attacks in melee because they all have the energy gauntlets, but the Dominion rifles are 3 shots. And it's one of those where, sure, there's situations where maybe you want the melee instead, but the Dominion rifles, I think the Dominion rifles are some of the best weapons that the Enforcers have. 3 shots, AP1, they're very versatile. I mean, there's certain things they won't do much into, obviously, like a Tunneler or a Forge Father's tank, because those are like heavy armor and heavy armor and armor 8 or 9. But at the same time, they're just really good rifles that'll work into almost any other infantry and smaller vehicles very well. And that's actually the next point we're going to talk about. Dominator rifles, really good. They don't have trademark, which, whatever, that's not the end of the world. It does limit what orders they can really benefit from. A lot of the really spicy, like the shoot twice orders, require trademark weapons. Seismic gauntlets are pretty good. They're AP2, like I said, they're 2 attacks base. which means you don't want to get them in with something that's going to out dice you. I wouldn't charge them into ghouls, for example, because the most, if I had 2 of these, you know, at 90 points, and you can take almost 10 ghouls at 90 points. If I take 2 of these, the most I could ever kill is 4 ghouls. But those ghouls are going to throw so many dice that if they get a good roll, they're going to win that assault every, you know, most of the time, just because of weight of dice, right? We have an expression around here. It's if you can't roll hot, roll lots. And that's where these are going to struggle, is into units that rely on rolling lots, you know, because that's not what they're there for. But you could put them into things like, I wouldn't put them again into like a Forge Father tank or especially not a Tunneler. Maybe a Forge Father tank or a Wolverine, but not a Tunneler. The Tunnelers just throw too many dice, like way too many dice. Like 6 attacks coming back from 1 vehicle, not even worth messing with. But something that has a lower volume of attacks, definitely worth trying to charge them in if you can. They can take Phase Claws, and I really like Phase Claws, but I haven't gotten to play with them yet. I haven't gotten to test them yet. I'm going to try to get that done hopefully this weekend, grayscale permitting. You know, so we'll see. I like them. The main thing with the Phase Claws is they are only AP 1, but they do give you 1 extra attack die, and they're elite, so they reroll 1s to hit an assault. And actually, I feel like the Phase Claws might be different on the Peacekeepers. We're going to look real quick, because I feel like they were different on the Peacekeepers than they were on the Assault Boys. So let's double check that right now. I could have, you know, do we do it on the screen? We just do it on the screen. Take less time, and you get to see it. Peacekeeper Captain, Peacekeepers. We're just going to go to, let's just add a unit of Peacekeepers, because this isn't submitted for a tournament. Advanced Training Anti-Grab, blah, 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 blah. So let's go here. All right, so these Peacekeeper Phase Claws. So the Peacekeeper Phase Claws are AP 2 and elite. So I would definitely lean towards those over the gauntlets, just because of the extra die. Sure, they don't have seismic, so you're gonna reroll heavy armor into 5s instead of 4s, but getting the extra die to me is worth it. Although you are losing the shooting, because to take the Phase Claws, you're giving up the Dominator rifle. So again, it's just, what do you want out of them? Do you want a unit that's going to throw a lot of AP2 melee dice, or do you want a more balanced unit that's going to give you shooting and it's going to give you fighting? And it may be worth the mix and match. Like, take a unit of 3. Let's go back over here. Take a unit of 3, and I think that's actually in here. You know, drop the rifle, pick up the extra attack, reroll 1 to the hit and assault. Maybe you put 1 or 2 into the squad, or just take a whole dedicated melee unit with counter charge that's going to really be a good charge deterrent. You know, people will look at that and they'll go, well, if I charge that, I might kill them, but they're going to be swinging, you know, if it's unit of 3, they're going to be swinging 9 dice hitting on 4s at AP 2. Like, they're going to, I don't know that anybody wins. You know what I mean? Like, they're going to look at that and go, maybe nobody walks away from this a winner. So I like the Phase Claws. I do need to test them. I've got some built. One of my buddies got a 3D printer. We bought the STLs from the Mantic site, and man, got them all primed. Just got to get them painted, and I really want to get them on the table. I've got some pretty high hopes for them. If you take the Defenders, which aren't, because I don't think the base ones can take that. I might have just like been an idiot. Yeah, I didn't think so. Close. So let me delete that. Peacekeepers. Boom. You can't take a burst laser or an incinerator in Peacekeepers. You have to take them in the Defenders, and they're not troops. So sorry about that. Like I said, haven't been feeling the best, and like some of this I'm probably going to be a little bit inaccurate on, just because of like my brain not being right, and I apologize. From there, we're going to move to Pathfinders. They're 110 points. They are armor 5, but they do have pretty good shooting. You know, they're single shot at AP 1 with Vicious and Marksman. So they're going to reroll damage dice of 1. They're going to throw a unit of 5, throws 5 dice, hitting on 4+, rerolling 1s to hit and 1s to damage with a 24-inch base range. The one shot makes me a little leery because 5 models doing one shot is just like, whew, man. Now, they're not going to clear hordes, right? But they're going to get their damage through. They're going to be pretty good into tanks, right? So if we go to Pathfinders, bam. Let's take a look at them. Vicious, Marksman, Vicious, Marksman. You know, so that's it. And then they do have Scout and Controlled Fire, which we're going to get into. But anyway, it's one of those, like, they don't have the trademark, so again, you're not really buffing them to give them, you know, like shoot twice or the anti-vehicle shots. But if you've got a more elite infantry, not like a Forge Fathers per se, but like an Enforcers or even like Nightmares, like if you've got a squad of Nightmares, they're going to put damage on something like that pretty well. Or even like Tunnelers, they're going to be all right into. Not Tunnelers, Tunnel Runners. They'll shred ghouls and like base rats and things like that. They're going to be good into elves, but you want your Genling lasers for the shields and then follow up with these. You don't want to shoot with these first for the shields and then follow up with the lasers. Although a lot of elf armor's pretty low, so it may not even matter. For 10 points, you can put a cloak on them that gives them stealthy. And in my opinion, this shouldn't even be an option. Just raise the cost of the unit 10 points and they always have the cloak. I guess, to me, like, the way I look at it is it's worth the 10 points to just try to protect this unit if you're going to use them. You know, giving them cover, giving them -1 to hit. They only are armor 5, you know, but they're 24-inch range, so they've got a longer threat range than a lot of your other guns and shooting. So if you're going to put them on the table, to me, it's worth 10 points to give them a -1 to hit. The drone you can get does bring a burst laser. It's a 15-point drone. It shoots 4 dice that pin. Again, I will... If it can take a burst laser, I'm probably putting the burst laser in the squad. Just because... And I had a discussion a little bit with this in the comments in my last video, which I will, you know, put up here right now. But... it's one of those where I look at burst lasers and I look at incinerators, and I see the value in incinerators, but I have just not seen more of a value than I get out of burst lasers. That's kind of where I look at it. Not that the incinerators are bad per se. It's more just... and it could just be what I play against most often. You know, I play against Plague, I play against Marauders, I play against Asterians, and some Forge Fathers, and the burst lasers are kind of meh into the Forge Fathers, but the incinerators would be too. You know, like those are just that, like they're just it's the way it is. So I'd rather have the 18-inch range gun that almost guarantees I get to pin you, like I just have to hit you, than the 12-inch gun that requires me to, you know, have you fail a nerve check in order for it to do anything. And that's just kind of how I look at it. Again, I know other people have had great success with it, and it could largely depend on how they've built their list, could largely depend on what they're playing against most often. So that is always a viable option, just from my experience in the game. And I have run some Flamers, I've just not run them on the boys, because I've got the Strider with it. My experience is that the burst laser has just been better for me. Overall, for their points, the only thing they really do that base enforcers don't do is scout, but they're still a little cheaper, you know, 20 points. You do up their cost 5 more with the drone and the cloak, however, so like they are 5 more than base enforcers if you give them all their upgrades, because they're 20 points cheaper. The drone's 15, the cloak's 10, so we go up 25 points. So it's one of those, like, They're about the same price as base enforcers, and the only thing they really offer you is a gun with AP1 and a single shot that isn't trademark. And then that's it. Like in Scout. You can take a single sniper rifle for 10 extra points. And again, I think that's one of those things where if you're taking the Pathfinders, there's no reason not to take a sniper rifle. You can use this to snipe out machine guns and heavy weapons inside of squads, which can be very beneficial. And then you have other units that could bring snipers that arguably fill the role better, though. Like you can get the monocycles. Same with the scouts. There's just better things that do what they do. And again, I'm not looking at how they interact with command units or anything else. I'm literally just looking at them in a vacuum. So, you know, you might look at that and go, yeah, but if you take this Pathfinder leader, you get this or you get that. And that's super fair. I'm just looking at them in a vacuum as they look on the paper right now. And then as we progress and dig through this and we look at the leaders, then we'll talk about how the leaders can kind of correspond with the different units and troops. So, again, keep that in mind when you're watching this. I'm just looking at their data sheets as they are in a vacuum. But again, the sniper rifle might be worth it. It does also, you know, like I said, give you something that can threaten things. You know, you might have a unit of marauders or something that's got a pinning weapon, and if you can shoot them and take that pinning weapon out, it can make your life a little bit easier. Assault enforcers, they're 130 points, man. I think these are bee's knees bread and butter. I absolutely love them. I have never run fewer than 2 squads in the games that I've played. I think they're fantastic. I think they're a great charge deterrent, and I think they just do everything. You know, their pistols aren't amazing, but they're pretty good, and their melee is pretty solid. You know, countercharge is a great deterrent against other melee units and armies. You know, the squad throws 10 dice at AP1 with their base loadout and hit on 4+. You could take an energy gauntlet on the sergeant, or you can take phase claws on any of them. The energy gauntlet does give the sergeant AP2 and seismic, and he keeps a pistol. The phase claws get rid of the pistol, but you get an extra die that rerolls hits of 1. Now, the Assault Enforcers phase claws are AP1, but again, 5 Assault Enforcers, if you give them all phase claws, 15 attacks, rerolling hits of 1 on AP1. Homie, that's gonna chill a lot of units out. And again, I've got some decent examples I'm gonna bring up in a minute, but that will get, you know, especially weaker units to just kind of pump those brakes a little bit. Phase claws are really good. Again, haven't put them on the table. Conceptually, they look really good. I am going to probably take a single unit, all phase claws. The problem is that I can't put them in the unit with the phase claw commander. He can only take wrist blade assault enforcers, which I thought was weird. And I'll double check that, but I'm 99% sure that is how it interacted. Which, again, I thought was weird. You know what? I've got it up. I forgot I had it up. We've got the Assault Enforcer Captain. So he can take... Yep. These are Enforcer Defenders. These are Assault Enforcers. And that's with the wrist blade. And these are Assault Enforcers. And then you can also take one medic. So I just found it kind of weird that homie can take phase claws, but none of his little boys can take phase claws. You know, because he's fantastic. I've already talked about him. But anyway, let's delete you. I think they're great. I think they have a lot of utility, and even with just the base loadout, again, I can think of a couple of interactions where people were like, I don't want to mess with that. And one that I mentioned in the last video is, you know, playing Jordan again, the Marauders game, and that one sticks out a lot because I learned so much in that game, but also because it was a lot of fun. He was just a great human to play with, and all the people at the Michigan GT were. But that one really stood out because he and I had a lot of good banter. It was a lot of good talking. He was a lot of fun, a lot of learning. It was fantastic. So he had and I mentioned this, he had the skyscrapers, and the only thing that kept them from just like screaming up the board at me was countercharge. Because again, yeah, he'll probably kill some, but because of countercharge, we're resolving simultaneously. So he's going to trade a whole unit of skyscrapers to kill maybe half a unit of assault enforcers. That's not a good trade for him. But if he could get his damage in first and kill half my unit, that's going to really mitigate my ability to put damage out against him. And then I played Plague round 1, and I used my assault enforcers. I charged them into, I think it might have been zombies, ghouls, something like that. He had a hero kind of like tucked into a little pocket. It was like a little pocket around some terrain that you couldn't really move through. And he had it tucked in there, giving its aura out. And I had charged the unit that he had there right in front of it. And I used the order that lets them stay in Overwatch. So I charged it. I won the assault. His unit ran away. I got my 3-inch consolidation. And then he had that pocket with his unit in here. And I just took that unit of assault enforcers and then made a line in front of his lord, his plague lord, and it was just like, the only way you're getting out of here is if you charge me. You're not walking through me. And then so what ended up happening was he charged me with, I think it was some leapers. I don't remember. He ended up charging me with something, and we resolved our damage simultaneously. I won the assault, stayed in Overwatch, and then I think I had 3 assault enforcers left. He did 2.5 damage there, or killed 2.5 assault enforcers, or yeah, because I had 3, but the third one had 1 hit point left, and so they were just still stuck there. And he was just like, "Oh my gosh, these are brutal." So again, I just think these things are fantastic, but I come from a very just like melee focused mindset. To me, melee isn't about doing damage as much as it is about extra movement, board positioning, in Firefight specifically, activation control. So there's a lot of things going on here. That was a lot of words, and I'm sorry. The other thing is, if you do take the pistols, they shoot on 5s, so don't really expect a lot. They can buff because the pistols are trademark, but really you're doing this as like a last resort. Like, maybe you need to shoot twice with your pistols. Maybe you need to give them 6 extra inches of range and give them marksman and vicious, or whatever it is. Maybe you need to give them anti-tank for some reason. Again, it's one of those, like, you're probably not going to want to spend the command points on them, but if you have the pistols, it's nice to know that you could if you needed to. I always take the gauntlets on the sergeant. I've never really had seismic matter a ton, but the AP2 is nice. And like I said, haven't tried the phase claws. Probably getting a game in with them this weekend. And like I just said, a lot of the orders don't really affect them outside of the ones that like do. And I know that doesn't make sense. And what I mean by that is because they're a melee-centric unit, there's not a lot of melee-centric orders. The assault commander does have an order of 3 plus 3 inches of movement, which that would benefit them. Getting a 15-inch charge would be very meaty. Enforcer operatives, 130 points. You could take their base rifles trademark, 2 shots, no AP, 18-inch range. Because they're trademarked, they can get bonus range, they can get AP, they can get marksman, they can get anti-vehicle, they can get anything under the sun. The first 3 you can get from a single order, so you can get bonus range, AP, and marksman. I believe it's 3 total command points, because I think it's 2 with 1 boosted. It could be 1 with 1 boosted, but I doubt that. That's a lot. I think it's 2 with 1 boosted. And then the anti-vehicle comes from a different order. But that anti-vehicle order also gives them bonus AP. So again, if you've got a vehicle and you're just going to dump your troop shooting into it, especially if it's not heavy, like if you've got a plague mule or like a jet where it doesn't have heavy armor, there's no reason not to use this order on them, because they'll become AP1 with anti-tank. So if you do any damage, that vehicle gets a pin token. That's awesome. That is awesome. The sergeant can take gauntlets and a pistol. So I don't know that it's worth 5 points, but I did it. And a lot of the reason had nothing to do with I didn't know anything about it. Again, like, was relatively new when I did the Michigan GT. I had played like 1 or 2 games, didn't really know a ton about what was going on. And so I was just like, the gauntlets look cool. Let's just give them gauntlets. I don't know what happens. So if I were to do it over again, and I have the models, I'm probably going to. If I were going to do it over again, though, I just put the base rifle on him to give me 4 rifles. The gauntlet's handy, and I've had the gauntlet and had it kind of save me a little bit. Like, this guy gets 2 attacks, so I've managed to squeeze an extra damage into something to allow me to win an assault. But it's not reliable, and I just don't know that it's worth it when I could have 4 guys with a rifle giving me 8 shots and then 1 guy with a special weapon. So, and having the extra rifle makes them even better because they have controlled fire. So if you charge me and I haven't activated, or I have an Overwatch token, I get to shoot you. So if I have 4 rifles, I now get 8 shots instead of 7 shots if I have the pistol. And it doesn't sound like a lot, but it does make a difference. They have a lot of special weapons options. There's one model that can take a special weapon. You can get a thermal rifle. They're kind of spicy. They're a little shorter range though, but they do have targeting systems. They're AP4, anti-tank, Dev D2, sorry. And I think you can actually take 2 of them. Let's find out. Again, I apologize. I just was a little goofy. Nope, just 1. I don't know why I said 2. Oh, you can take 2. You can take 2 in a squad. But again, these are cool, but they're very short range. But you can still use like high velocity ammo, which will give all your rifles anti-tank, so you can just throw a ton of anti-tank. But like I said, the thermal rifle is very short range. They've got to be close to do what you want them to do. So it's just things to keep in mind. The other special weapon options, you can take fusion guns. They make pretty good crowd control. They're 2 shots, but they have blast 2D or D2 plus 1. So they're pretty likely to hit, and they're pretty likely to give you bonus hits. Like the worst you're going to do on average, right, is even if you only hit with 1 die, you're guaranteed to still have 2 hits. But again, the issue becomes it's 9 inches in range, so you've got to be very close with them, and that's not necessarily bad, but that's not necessarily where you want them to be anyway. At least not the way I've experienced them. I tend to keep them in that like 12 to 18 inch range. Like, I'm trying to keep them out of charge range as much as I can when I'm shooting them, things like that. Again, burst lasers, holy cow, I love these things. They're 4 shots. You could take 2 of them, that's 8 shots that can pin, and you can throw that at a single squad. And like I said before, if you can't roll hot, roll lots, man. Just like up your dice game, son. But if you want to go big, you spend 20 points each, and you take some missile launchers. They're Dev 2, not Dev D2. They're Dev 2. So they got big damage. They're anti-aircraft. So they'll work on, I don't know why I said jets. Oh, jets. My brain said jet bike. See, I told you, like, I'm still not right. So they'll really do quick work onto things like jets. Anti-vehicle is going to punch through a lot of heavy armor. AP4 is going to make them really brutal. And 36 is some of the longest range you have in your army. So 36-inch range missile launchers, really meaty. And they can benefit from the Peacekeeper command aura. So, like, you can give them Way to Fire 1. And I believe it's Vicious. Way to Fire 1 and Vicious for shooting. So, 2 of them in a squad, pretty expensive. But if you have 2 Enforcer operative squads on the table, that's 4 missile launchers you can kind of, like, have spread out all over the place. again, it's a good deterrent to keep people from like poking things out that they would normally like feel really comfortable just throwing out there. Every order benefits this unit. Again, if you take the base loadout, you can get 5 Genlings. That's 10 dice. So now your orders are way more efficient. They're cheaper, but it also limits their role, and they become more generalized rather than specialized, and they become more of a resource sink. Did I do another one? Probably. Nope. So they become a bit more of a resource sink. And that's the thing, is like, they're going to be really good into base rats, you know, the Night Stalkers. They're going to be good into zombies. They'll be fine into ghouls just because of volume. You know, you've got 10 dice or 2 shots per guy. So if you take squads of 6 or whatever, that's fine. So it's just one of those, like, they're not bad that way. It just, you're now declaring that this is going to be a resource sink in order for them to operate outside of crowd control. In order for them to operate outside of the confines of just like, I'm going to shoot and just throw dice at things. You know, whereas if you've got the burst laser, you can fire that at almost any infantry unit, and it's still useful because of the pin token. The missile launchers, you can fire at anything, and it's just, if it hits, like, it's taking damage most likely. So again, that's one of those like really interesting things where it's like, you keep them cheap, you keep them generalized, but then you know that you've got to spend orders in order for them to do what you want them to do. Because being able to throw 10 AP1 anti-tank dice isn't terrible. And it's going to, again, you know, keep those, like, transport jets from screaming up the table, you know, because they're going to be like, oh, heck. So, that's my take on them. Enforcer Defenders. This is another Armor 7 troop. They're 28 points a model-ish. I forget exactly how they break down, because I think it's squads of 5. Let's double check that. Enforcer Defenders. And I'm only doing this because, like I said, I was on the beginnings of my illness when I wrote this, and I haven't checked it, but I wanted to make sure we recorded it and got back in there. And now I'm like, oh gosh, what other stupidity did I do? So yeah, 5. Yeah, they're about 28 points a model. They get a shotgun, and they get assault weaponry. And then they have anti-grav, defensible, controlled fire, advanced training. Pretty standard stuff, right? So let's go back to here. Shield does give them defensible, like I said. And it effectively means they can always use controlled fire. As long as, well, yeah, because they just get to Overwatch for free. That's what defensible does. They're extremely short range. 12-inch shotguns. They're not trademark. They don't pin. They don't do anything. They're just shotguns. They do have knockback. Sorry. Pinning shotgun as a points upgrade on the drone. Of the drone upgrades, I'd consider this one's fine. Like, they have a few other drone upgrades. The pinning shotgun's a solid one. There's one that gives a command tactician black die, which would be fine. And then there's a mind layer, which, the way I understand it, it does 3 AP1 hits automatically when the squad is assaulted, and that counts towards combat res. So if you charge into them, you're just taking 3 AP1 hits off rip before they even shoot you, and then they still get to shoot you, as long as they get their charge reaction. So these are, like, again, they're intended to be a charge deterrent. The drones are not cheap. It's almost as much as just taking another body for a lot of the drones. Now, the knockback does mean you get a bonus die when you are charged, as long as the charging unit was within 6 inches when they were charged. It's okay. It just means, you know, it's one of those weird things where it's like, it's not bad. It's not good. It's situational. And there's going to be times where you're like, man, I'm glad I had it. But I just feel like either they just seem very underwhelming. And again, if you've got good experiences with them, please tell me. Because I look at them and I just see something where it's like, I don't understand the purpose in these. because I feel like they would benefit from maybe like if they got 2 dice in melee instead of 1, even at no AP, or like if their shotguns also did pinning the way the Accutech shotguns do. I just feel like they're outshined by Peacekeepers. Even though Peacekeepers are giving you less wounds, I feel like they do more for the points, right? Because Peacekeepers, I think you could take 3 for almost the same price. So you're getting 6 wounds or hit points instead of 10. And they're not defensible because they don't have the shield. But their guns are better. They're able to countercharge or shoot. Their melee's better. So it's just one of those, like, I look at Peacekeepers and I look at these and I'm like, I'm going to take the Peacekeepers every time. So if there's something that, you know, you have come across with the regular base Enforcer defenders, please tell me. I love the models. I just can't justify bringing them when I kind of read what they do. The Breach and Eradicate Enforcers look neat. They're quality anti-vehicle melee. They are very low volume, so, you know, roll hot, not lots. They're AP4 anti-tank, devastating D2, 5 attacks total. So if you roll well enough, you're gonna eviscerate Broncos, mules, things of that nature. But you're still gonna want to make sure you're softening those heavier targets before you send them in. You're still gonna want to shoot like the Tunneler or the Forge Father or the tank or the Wolverines. You're gonna want to shoot those with your missiles or something first before you send these homies in. Because 5 attacks can go really well, but it can also just go really poorly. And that's really what keeps me from really putting them in a list, is they're just too low in volume. Like a single attack each is just too low. You know, because I'd want to charge them into tanks, I'd want to charge them into vehicles, but like, there's just better tools for that job. You know, the Strider is a better tool for that job. And I don't mean the melee one. I'm talking about the one with the Polaris cannon. You know, sure, it's only 2 shots, but I also can be 24 inches away and it's heavy armor. So they're just, again, it's just a better tool for the job. And the thing to keep in mind is if you do run them, you also need to be aware that you don't have to kill the vehicle. You just have to win the assault, you know? So again, it's one of those, like, winning the assault activates the vehicle if the vehicle hasn't already activated. So that is a thing to keep in mind, is you don't have to win. Or not win. You don't have to kill it, you just have to win. But it's, like I said, it's just that volume. Because if I have line of sight and I'm hitting on 3s for a straight charge, like, that's still iffy. I could still get 2 hits. And then it's like, man, maybe I wound you, maybe I don't. And then, like, if I only do 1 damage, there's a very real chance that I lose that assault. And even if I don't lose any models, I'm in a bad spot. So again, that's just one of those, like, it's so iffy. I want to like them. They look neat. I'm still kind of working out the best way to use them, and I think the best way to use them is, like I said, you soften your target up with an anti-vehicle shot, or at least get an anti-vehicle shot to pin your target to give it -1 to hit, and then shut off its ability to react if it has any kind of charge reactions, and then send them in, and then hope that you can just get a couple damage through, and then everything else stacks up enough that they just struggle to do anything to you, and you win the assault. Like, that's how I see them. But 150 points for something that is such a one-dimensional unit seems a little weird. Overall, I think the Enforcers have some great troops options. A couple of them feel a little redundant. Like I said, I think the Defenders and the Peacekeepers are a bit redundant. They could probably do a very minor rework to kind of take some of that redundancy away. And I'm by no means complaining. There's a lot of options here. It just feels like some of these units are just a touch redundant, and maybe something very minor just to kind of separate them a little bit more, or maybe there's something I'm missing. So again, specifically looking at like the Defenders and the Peacekeepers, If you've got good experience with defenders, please, by all means, like, let me know. Let me know what it is you're doing, because when I look at them, I'm just like, eh. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to rank them from a like best to worst. And again, this is completely subjective, and this is based on my experiences of the game. This is in no means intended to like incite riots or arguments. What it's intended to do is promote discussion. So if you've got different experiences with some of these troops, by all means, let me know in the comments. Say, hey man, your video, I disagree with it. Here's why. So that I can take a look and kind of see your perspective. Like, I come to every game with a learning mentality, not a I know everything mentality. So when I give my opinion is being given with the intent that if you disagree with me, we'll collaborate and we'll figure out not what's better, because again, I don't want to know what's better. I want to know what your experience is, because if I can see how you're doing it and it fits the way I want to do it, I can adopt it. And then same, if you can see how I'm doing it and it fits the way you want to do it, you can adopt it. It's just better to get different perspectives on everything. So that's where I'm coming from. Personally, I think the assault and the regular enforcer operatives, best of the troop units. They're the most flexible. They are relatively cheap for what you get out of them. Each unit can basically benefit from every order that you have. There's nothing that would be wasted on either unit. They are both situationally very good with pretty much every order, and then couple that with the fact that like the assault enforcers are a great charge deterrent, and they have a 12-inch charge threat range. I just think they're super good, and they just have so many good options for them. You know, the shooting enforcers can take the special weapons. The assault enforcers can, but I think you're just better off either loading them up with phase claws or keeping them with the wrist blade pistols. Keep them cheap, or keep them, you know, like high volume. That's where I think they are. I think peacekeepers are probably going to be where I would rank second best, and that's just because I think their base loadout is so good. The dominators are a great combination of volume and AP and efficiency. Countercharge and or controlled fire with the dominators and energy gauntlets is really good. Phase claws look like a very viable, great option. And phase claws, like, those are going to be like, oh, those are meaty because of the volume. You know, I charged something. It was like one of my first games, and I was like, oh, these guys are tough. I'm going to charge them into something. And then I killed like 2 models. And then the counter swings happened, and I was like, oh, that was kind of dumb. You know, so it's like, looking at the phase claws, I think if you're going to charge with them consistently, you want phase claws. If you're just going to kind of send them into lighter vehicles and then use their shooting to kind of pick off crowd control stuff, I think you just keep them with the Dominator and the Gauntlet. And that's, again, what I like about the Peacekeepers, is that they can kind of fill a variety of roles. I think Engineers and Pathfinders are effectively tied. The only reason I don't put Engineers higher is because of the Auxiliary. They're just a cheap unit that can benefit from pretty much everything as far as orders go, and they make a great utility or screening squad. Like, 60, 65 points. You throw some Engineers on the table, they can run around, they score some points, and life is good. Pathfinders are still pretty cheap. They're just less cheap. They aren't auxiliary, but they do have Scout and the Stealth option. The only issue with them is, like, 5-up armor isn't great, and their rifles are solid, but, you know, like I said, they're not going to do the heavy lifting. You know, you've got one shot at AP1. They are marksmen, like, they have some buffs, but it's just like, I could just take Peacekeepers that get 3 shots at AP1. Would I rather have triple the amount of shots, or would I rather have marksman and whatever, you know? I think it's marksman and vicious. And it's just like, it's... And again, there's probably something with Pathfinders I'm missing. There's probably some sort of, like, leader unit that gives them something. Maybe there isn't. But I haven't dug into the Pathfinder side. I know that's, like, there's, like, the big Pathfinder drone, and they have all this stuff. And I haven't dug into that side yet. But to me, they're just kind of tied right there with Engineers. I think the Breach and Eradicate Enforcers are next on the list. And that's simply because, again, and they're kind of expensive. They do have a role. It is clearly defined. But what their role is can just be done by other units, but better. Not necessarily troops units, but other units. You know, there's the heavy squad. You can just bring 5 missile launchers. They do literally the same thing that Breach and Eradicate Enforcers do, but at 36-inch range. So, and sure, they're more expensive, but I also just have 36-inch range missile launchers, right? So it's just kind of one of those where it's like, at 150 points, coming from a competitive perspective, I just can't justify bringing them. If they had something that really benefited them as far as orders go, I would probably like change my mind. But to me, they're just a little bit too expensive for being a one-trick pony that doesn't really benefit from anything. And I think the Enforcer Defenders come in at just dead last. Like, I just feel like they're discount peacekeepers, even though they're cheaper by a lot when you break down their per model cost. And then you got to bring a drone to really make them feel like they're worth bringing, and that just ups their cost, right? Because they're 140 for 5, but I think the cheapest drone was like 15 points. But I think the rest of them were 20 to 30. And honestly, like I said before, if they had the Accutech shotguns instead, I think now we're talking, right? Like, they give pinning, they have an additional die. I haven't put them on the table yet, so once I play a game or two with them, I may change my mind. I just keep looking at them going, I look at these and I look at just base enforcers, and I can't see a single reason to take these over base enforcers. So again, if I'm missing something, please let me know. I appreciate it. And then that's going to wrap us up. We kept it at under an hour. Thanks a lot for watching. Hope you enjoyed it. Next, we're going to look at some of the command units. And then we'll be looking at support and then specialist, probably in that order. Who knows? We'll see how things go. Big shout out to Military Gaming Command. If you guys have not heard me talk about them before, check their website out, militarygamingcommand.org. They are a nonprofit that is run by veterans, so it's very near and dear to my heart. They use gaming to build communities and to support wounded and injured and disabled veterans. They do a lot of really good work, and I've worked with them a little bit here and there on some projects. I've run some fundraisers for them, and I'm looking to get back into it as I kind of work through some of the health issues that I've had over the last 12 months.